Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Coach Rich here with Complete Performance Coaching, and I hope everybody's having a wonderful Friday. So, before we get into my topic for the day, I did wanted to talk just really quick about the World Series. The World Series just ended. It was a great series, very entertaining, and so congratulations to the Houston Astros for winning it all. But one of the things I love so much is just being able to see these elite athletes and just watching them just play at their best, and so much fun to watch, not only from a fan perspective, which I am, but also just from a coaching or a mental toughness perspective. And so it was a great series. I think a lot of great things that we can kind of take from that. And so I'm actually going to be working on an article here in the very near future, just kind of highlighting some of the things that I saw, some of the things that that I really found interesting, and things that maybe we can take away from the World Series. So be on the lookout for that. So let's talk about anxiety. We talk about anxiety so much on here, and it's really for a good reason. I mean, anxiety is everywhere, right? We've got anxiety not only in sports, but just in everyday life, and it's a huge part of life. And so what I wanted to talk about specifically today was just kind of the basics of anxiety, and kind of what it is. And I think anxiety a lot of times kind of gets a little bit of a bad rap. A lot of people view anxiety and see it as just this bad thing. But I think the reality is that anxiety is actually a good thing. There's actually a purpose for anxiety. If you think back to, like caveman days, for example, and then you got a caveman that's out kind of hunting for food, and they hear kind of this rumbling in the bushes or something. They're probably going to have a lot of anxiety, right? I know I would if I was in that situation, because you don't know what's in that bush. You don't know if it's a saber-toothed tiger or something, I don't know, that's going to try and eat you or something. And so that person, that caveman, is going to have a lot of anxiety. And so what anxiety does is it basically protects you. It's kind of this survival mechanism that's sort of built into our bodies. And so what happens is you've got these kind of like different parts in your brain. So if this is my brain, okay, and this is kind of the front part of my brain right here, this is the logical part of your brain. This is where you're rational and you're thinking clearly, and this is where a lot of us really want to be most of the time. But what happens a lot of times when we're really anxious, we've got this other part of our brain kind of right in there that's kind of in the middle, kind of towards the bottom of our brain. And that's kind of where this fight or flight sort of response is located. And so what happens is when we're operating in that fight or flight response, is our brain basically sends these signals to our bodies. And so it may send blood and oxygen and all of those things to the parts of the body that we need, and it takes away the blood and oxygen from parts of the body that we don't need. So for example, in our caveman example, the caveman may be having the blood and oxygen go to his legs because he needs to run as quickly as he can to get away from whatever it is. Now, what usually happens then is your body's taking stuff away from other parts of the body, which could be things like maybe your digestive system or other things like that. But it's really kind of an amazing thing, and it's very functional, and the whole purpose is just to kind of keep us alive and to keep us safe and to avoid these dangerous situations. But unfortunately, what happens a lot of times is our brain kind of tells us that we've got all these situations that our brain is telling us that it's a really dangerous thing and we need to watch out for it, when it really isn't. And so that's usually when anxiety kind of becomes a little bit of an issue, and sometimes it's things that we struggle with. And so I want to show you guys something here. Hopefully you guys can see it. I drew it up ahead of time. So this is called the IZOF, or the Individual Zone of Optimal Functioning. So it's kind of your typical graph here. So down here, I believe this is the x-axis. It's been a long time since I've been in school, so I can't really remember. We got the y-axis over here. So down here on the x-axis, we have anxiety. And so I went ahead and labeled that from 0 to 10. Up here is our measurement of performance. And again, from 0 to 10. Now, what happens a lot of times, or what you can see from this, is that the more anxiety we have, the better our performance gets, right? And this up here, this is kind of like, if you ever felt like you've been in the zone or anything like that, that's kind of where we're at right here. Okay, this is where we all want to be, really all the time, every time we play. And so as our anxiety goes up, our performance goes up. But then there's this point where it starts to decline, right? So it's really important as an athlete to know this. But what's different, and this is the individualized part, is for some people it may look like this. For some people the peak may be right here, and then it might come down. For other people it may look more like this. And so, for me personally, I was probably this person over here. I had a hard time with anxiety, and so I had to work really hard on just being able to kind of relax myself. Other people are over here, and sometimes they need anxiety, sometimes they need that pressure. But this is what I think is really important, to have, to really know yourself as an athlete and know kind of where you're at your best. For this particular person, they need their anxiety to be, let's say, at a 5. And so you need to know kind of where you are at this current time and how to get yourself, either move yourself up to a 5 or to bring yourself down to a 5. So hopefully that's a visual that kind of helps you guys a little bit. The other thing I want to talk to you guys about as far as anxiety goes, is kind of those anxious thoughts or those anxious feelings that we all have. The reality is we've kind of constantly got these thoughts that are going through our head pretty much all of the time. Sometimes we pay attention to those thoughts. Other times we don't. It's kind of like if you've ever had like the radio playing in the background, and sometimes you completely forget that it's on. But then every once in a while you may hear the song and you kind of really get into it and you start kind of moving along or singing, and you really sort of focus on the song. Well, that's kind of what our thoughts are like. We've always got these thoughts going through our head, but then we always have particular thoughts that we really kind of grab a hold on and we really sort of focus on. And when those thoughts are negative thoughts or anxious thoughts or anything like that, that's when we start to struggle a little bit, and that's when we start to have this anxiety. So a couple sort of analogies that I use a lot of times when I talk to people about anxiety that I think are helpful. This first one I call my Home Depot analogy. Actually, I just went to Home Depot today. And so it's kind of funny that I'm talking about this now. But so for those of you that have been to Home Depot or Lowe's or any sort of store like that, you know that they're basically filled with tools, right? And so for me, I like to look at my thoughts and my feelings as a tool, as something that I can use. And so let's say that I have a picture frame that I want to hang on the wall. And I've got the picture frame, I just need a hammer and nails. And so I go to Home Depot to go get this hammer and nails. Now, for those of you that know, Home Depot's filled with tools. There's just aisles filled with all kinds of different sorts of tools. Now, let's say I'm walking, the hammer and nail aisle is all the way in the back, and so I'm walking. And as I walk through the first aisle, I pass the screwdrivers and screws. And so normally what I should do is I'll walk by and be, hey, look, there's screwdriver and screws. And I'll just kind of keep walking until I get to the hammer and nails, get what I need, and leave, right? Well, what usually happens to us, especially when we're stuck, is we walk by the screwdriver and screw aisle and we get focused on that. And we look at that and we say, hey, there's screwdriver and screws. Do I need a screwdriver? What size screwdriver? Do I need Phillips? Do I need flathead? What kind of screw do I need? And we go through this whole process and become so focused on the screwdriver and screws when what I really need is a hammer and nails. And so we do that a lot of times with our thoughts, and we focus on thoughts that we don't need. And so the other way that I like to think of this is, so some of you may have seen the show So You Think You Can Dance. Now, if I was going to go on that show, first of all, I'm a terrible dancer. Yeah, I'm just bad. There's no way around that, really. So if I were to go on that show, I would be having all kinds of negative thoughts. I'd be thinking you're going to embarrass yourself. You're an idiot for even thinking that you should go on this show. Just a lot of thoughts like that, right? And to a certain extent, some of those may be valid. They may be realistic thoughts. But at some point in that sort of thought process, I may have this thought of, if you work hard enough, you might actually do okay. And so if I'm looking at those different kinds of thoughts, which one is going to be more helpful? It's going to be the one that says, if you work hard enough, you might actually do okay. And so that's a thought that I'm just going to grab a hold of, and I'm not going to let it go. I'm just going to focus on that thought. Because those other thoughts, those aren't tools that I want. Those thoughts are not helpful. And so those are the thoughts that I'm just going to try and ignore. And so we need to be able to just kind of grab a hold of whatever thought that is helpful and focus on that one. And if we can do that, then we're going to be in a better place to reach our potential. We'll be in a better place to succeed. Going back to the World Series, those guys, I'm guessing, were focused on all of those positive thoughts or those helpful thoughts. If you're focused on the negative thoughts, you're not going to be able to succeed in a stage like that. And so hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully this is all helpful for you guys. I think it's something that helps us in all aspects of our life, whether it's sports or school or just everyday life. And so hopefully this makes sense. If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to ask, and I will be happy to answer them. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a great weekend, and we will talk to you later. Bye.